Brilliant. Is everyone ready? I always feel like the slightly dull guy after that. You had Apple with their beautiful, beautiful slides, and Joe and Ned doing their awesome stuff. And then you talked about mindfulness and stuff, and then you get me talking about managing and business stuff. Anyway, we've got 40 minutes. I've got too much stuff to cover in 40 minutes, and they've told me I'm not allowed to run over. So I may skip some bits, but if I do, get me on Hoover, or my email is neiljohn@microsoft.com. Get me on Teams, get me on email. If there's something that I don't cover that you wanted to know about, or you want to tell me how awesome we are, or more likely tell me what you want us to do differently, just drop me an email, and I would love to talk to you over the next few days. I wanted to begin by jumping off one of the points that Joe made earlier in the first session, and that's the change in Mac usage. I've been in Intune now for 10 years. I've been in Microsoft for 20 years, or nearly 20 years. When I started in Intune and we were looking at Mac, the use case for Mac was really similar across the board. It was executives who had really expensive shoes and could get what they wanted, or it was security teams or creatives, whatever they may be. But that was it. No one else used Mac. What we see today is radically different, right? We're seeing organizations adopt choice, where they're saying that for employee attraction, to get the right talent into their organization, they're offering Mac. And other organizations are just saying, look, hey, when we give people the platform that they ask for, they bother support less, and they're happier and more productive. Now, who'd have thought that? If you give somebody the platform that they like, they're going to be more happy using it. It's phenomenal, but we're seeing that everywhere, and we're seeing those users of Mac change. They're no longer what I would say is like niche users. They're just people like me that want to do email and they want to do productivity, right? They're not special. Engineers still use them, security teams still use them, but we're seeing bigger growth outside of that in productivity, where the lowly MacBook Air is out there doing the donkey work, right? And it's serving flawlessly, does great with productivity apps, and so we're seeing more people want to use them. So anyway, into the agenda. I'm going to look at Intune, I'm going to look at what's new, what we've done for the last year, I'm going to look at what's next, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that strategic vision and how that's shifted slightly over the last year and what that probably means for us over the next year. My colleagues over in Defender have given me some things to talk about too, so I'm going to talk about theirs. And then I've also got some Entra bits and pieces as well. We'll talk about platform single sign-on and some changes to registration as well. So this is what we've been doing. This is kind of everything that has been done in the past year. The stuff highlighted in blue is stuff that we have shipped in the last 12 months itself. So we did local account management. There's more work to come there, so we are doing Lapse integration with that coming up. That's kind of in engineering at the moment. Platform single sign-on we did a while back, but we integrated passkeys. Obviously, passkeys are super cool. We like them a lot. Microsoft are attacked voraciously for credentials, and if you imagine all of the Microsoft services that live out there in the cloud, that represents all the governments and all these big organizations. So our systems and services are attacked greatly. That shot up massively actually after the Ukraine war started. We had to increase various things to deal with the increase in attacks on the platforms and services. But things like passkeys help hugely with that. If your users are not using passwords for authentication, it's quite difficult to phish them. So passkeys and passwordless auth is a big deal. User channel support for user search. This was a big one for me. I've been fighting for this for a long time, and I was really pleased to see it finally ship. This essentially is putting the user cert in the right place rather than the wrong place that we used to put it, which is great. You can tell marketing aren't here this year because I can say what I like. DDM as well, payloads. You'll see us invest hugely in DDM. You'll see why shortly. I'll explain a little bit more about why DDM is important to us as a service and a platform. We absolutely believe in the strategy that Apple are going there, and if we could put a rocket under that and do everything with DDM, we would do. Change-based check-in. I'm going to do a demo and talk about that a little more in a while, so I'm not going to cover it here. We've increased the script size to 2 megabytes. So Joe talked about that in her session, the NIST-backed GitHub repo for baselines. We were unable to run those scripts. So we worked with Bob, and in fact, we're doing continuous work with Bob actually in the NIST team to make that a little bit better for Intune. But now that's it runs quite nicely. There were a few other scripts as well, like installer-mater and things like this, that were just a little bit too big for us to run. So we increased that size to 2 megabytes. We shipped remote help full control, which was great as part of the Intune suite offering. And we also did cloud PKI. One of the other shifts that we're seeing is customers moving more and more stuff out of data centers into the cloud, and cloud PKI enables that. So we've seen quite a lot of demand for that. And then we did on-demand, so we did this kind of custom PKG and DMG. So this is essentially having those custom PKGs in company portal. That's been more problematic than I would have liked, but it's, I think most of those bugs are ironed out now. So that's what we've been doing. That's kind of the last 12 months. So what's coming up? Device attestation, again, Joe talked about this in security. We're big fans of device attestation and using the Acme cert. That's rolling out actively now across all of the tenants. It's non-optional for Intune, so it's not something you have to switch on, and you can't opt out of it. It's just something that we switch on and we'll roll out across the board. Laps for macOS, we've done that for Windows already, and that looks like it's scheduled for Q3 at the moment. That's just going through engineering right now, so we're just starting to do the initial testing of that in Graph, which means there's no UI for it yet, hence I can't show you what that looks like. But that will essentially enable the creation of a local admin account during Setup Assistant. That's the feature, so I'm sure you've seen that in Setup Assistant, but that means you can have a standard end user and we'll pre-provision you a local admin account and handle the password setting and rotating a password for that admin account. Custom PKG script detection. We've done quite a lot actually with custom PKG and detection. So one of the things that we changed, which I don't think we documented and we've not really talked about enough, but so the way we detect if an application is installed or not is by the bundle ID. So we look to see if that bundle ID is returned, and essentially we use Spotlight to do that, right? So it's essentially MD find, and we say, ask the Mac, have you seen this app? And it looks for the bundle ID. If it's found it, it says great, and then we don't install it, right? If it says it doesn't have that bundle ID, we go, okay, well, you don't have it, so we're going to install it. But not all applications put a bundle ID somewhere that Spotlight can find it. And some applications exclude themselves from Spotlight. So not every application wants to broadcast itself to the end user as being installed. So we also drop back to looking for the package receipt. So if we can't find the bundle ID, we then look for the package receipt, which is good, and that's made a huge improvement to how we detect apps. But then there are still apps that we struggle with. There are still apps that don't, we've got no bundle ID for them and we've got no package receipt. So we're going to provide this custom script detection. So when you configure the PKG in Intune, there'll be a box that you can specify a script. And then if that script returns a 0 or a 1, we'll determine whether it's installed or not, right? So for those apps that are really difficult to determine whether it's installed or not, we can do custom PKG. Recovery lock management, again, this is a big part of security, but we want to stop users getting into Recovery OS, especially if they've got their own file vault key. If they can get their file vault key and they can get in here, they can do things. And we would rather they couldn't do those things. So by setting the password, that helps us do that. Similar to Laps, there'll be auto-rotate in here, and you'll be able to set it, and we'll be able to rotate it, and you'll be able to retrieve it as well. Just-in-time compliance remediation. This essentially is if the device is not compliant and they open the app, rather than launch them into the Intune portal, we'll tell them what to do natively in the app. Right, so typically that will be, by far the most common here is they've not upgraded their OS, so they're probably a dot release behind, and it will tell them you're a dot release behind, go and update. But it does it in the app, we don't launch them into another portal. This is quite a big one. Can I get a show of hands? Who's aware of this change from Entra to not support keychain for Entra device registration? I can't see any hands. Can someone raise their hand? Nobody's aware of this. Right, I'm going to talk about this more in a little bit. Get your pencils out because you're going to need to take some notes. This is a big change. Resource Explorer. Resource Explorer is coming this month. It's really, really cool, and essentially it is for Mac and for iOS. It means that we keep and we display in Intune every bit of information that the device returns to us via MDM. So when you do a device query, when you do a device check-in with Apple devices, when you do that check-in, you get given a ton of stuff about the device. It tells you loads of attributes. Historically, we've not kept them, and we've not shown them to you. Resource Explorer is one of the very first steps where we're beginning to increase the amount of attribute data that we share back to you and allow you to use. So this is, I think, about 2 weeks away. So keep an eye on your consoles. If you have a look in the device blade, you'll see Resource Explorer there, and you'll be able to see a ton of extra information. Even better here is that it's updating the legacy inventory data was updating every 7 days, and this is updating every check-in. So it's significantly better than we had previously. And we're doing more DDM stuff. So Ben Flam, who was here last year, who really wishes he was here this year looking at the weather report, I think, he is pushing really hard for DDM. I'll talk a little bit more about why DDM is so important to us, but essentially everything that lives in DDM almost immediately lands on our backlog and near the top, right? So everything that's DDM capable, we push to do really, really quickly. There's a whole bunch of things that we absolutely want to do there. You know, the OS update reports is coming, and they're really, really cool, using DDM for apps. Predicates as well, so being able to determine which devices will apply that policy, but you apply those predicates in the policy itself. So it's got nothing to do with Intune, really. You're just kind of saying, hey, if the device meets these requirements, put this policy on, please. But you push the policy out to all the devices, and you trust the device to make the decision whether it applies it or not based on the conditions of the device. So very, very cool. And then obviously anything new from WWDC next month. So it's really difficult to plan your engineering resource cycle, because we know that we're going to have to do stuff between now and September or October, but we don't know what, because we won't find out until, well, we know some actually, but we don't know enough to figure that out yet. So there will be stuff there, and we'll have to do it. And then we're also doing visionOS and tvOS. So these are kind of just entering private preview. If you are interested in visionOS and you're going to use them a lot, I'd love to talk to you about how you're going to use them and what your plans are for them. Similarly, tvOS, I'm a little bit more biased for visionOS. I've got lots of information for tvOS and the use case, but I would love to learn more about how you plan to use visionOS in your businesses. Who's going to use them? How many? What do you need them to do from a management perspective? And we're just starting that preview in June, and there'll be a more public release later in the calendar year. Available at them. I'm going to skip this, right, and I'm going to move on in the interests of staying within time, because apparently Apple overran this morning, so I'm not allowed to go over. It's a bit harsh, wasn't it? Right. So this is something I hear fairly regularly, especially from admins of what I would consider kind of productized MDMs. So this would probably include config manager as well, right? So anything that kind of lives on a server that you can see, and it's not living at a kind of hyperscale, right? So when I joined Intune 10 years ago, it was 100,000 devices. It's a lot bigger than that now, right? The scale of Intune it's actually quite difficult to comprehend. It's a huge platform. So some of those decisions that we took a decade ago, probably not ideal from a performance perspective today. So we hear this fairly frequently. And this is a big focus of us right now. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the check-ins and how we think about them and how they work, and some of the changes that we've made recently. So this is a little bit Windows biased, the data, but it kind of loosely applies across all platforms. So we have single device check-ins. So this would be, you've actually triggered a sync. It's kind of an initiated thing, or the user's asked to go and do an action, like they've gone and asked to go and install an app or something like that. So we kind of trigger a check-in based on that. Then we've got client initiated. These are scheduled. So this will be the polling. This will be the 8-hour check-in that you've probably read about and seen. So this is where the device is on a schedule and it checks in, whether it needs to or not, right? So it's interesting. The first one, single device, it's checking in because there's an action to do. It's got to install an app. It's got to do something. The second one, often when we look at the data, it's not doing anything. It's just checking in, but there's nothing to do, right? Because there's no policy change, there's nothing to do. So it's just checking in, but there's nothing. But it's costing us resources, right? It's still costing compute time. It's taking time at the gateways that we have to go and deal with. And then the last one is change-based. So this is fairly new, but essentially what Intune does is when it detects that there's a change in policy, we ping the device immediately and ask it to check in. So we do this per device, per organization, and there are time limits, and there's also throttling and stuff involved there as well. So we don't want devices that are checking in constantly over and over again. So there's some stuff that's happening there in the background to protect that. But overall, that's what we do. Device check-in traffic, again, this is data for Windows, but it's really similar across all of the platforms. So the change-based stuff, and then the maintenance stuff. The maintenance stuff, the light blue stuff, is nothing to do pretty much. Right? That's where we're seeing devices check in, and there's no action. So the problem here is that if you spend all your compute time doing the light blue stuff, when stuff actually does need to be done, they're all dealt with in the same queue, right? So the device that comes in that's got an actual policy change and we need to go and get it to the device quickly is caught up in the same queue of devices waiting for check-in that have got nothing applied to them. So you can see from there the various different things that are built up. Again, this is for Windows, so we don't do sync for user login on Mac, and there's a few other differences here, but you get the idea, right? That historically that's what's happened. The vast majority of check-ins happening to Intune are not resulting in any action. So we've taken some action and we've done some change for that. So what we have now is change-based check-ins. So all of these things result in an MDM check-in on a Mac. So if the admin targets or untargets a payload, if we modify the contents of a targeted payload, if there's group membership changes, so if you just add a user to a group, it changes what we call the intent, so the targeted group of those of that policy, or if the store app version updates. So this is important for things like VPP apps and stuff like that, where the version changes and we need to go and get the device to come and check in. 3 and 4 are happening behind the scenes, so they're not admin driven, but they'll still trigger the same change. And I want to go back quickly. So where it talks about IME, that is scripts and custom packages on Mac. So this currently applies to policy. It doesn't apply to anything that's happening via our agent, the sidecar agent, which manages scripts and PKG and DMG. That work is still in progress. And there's tons of work that happens to kind of make this stuff happen. So across all of the infrastructure that we have, which is operating at pretty big scale these days, we have to balance and manage that. So to a point where whenever any new feature is shipped within Intune, it has to go through this validation where we check to see if it's going to impact our check-in times, is it going to impact the gateways that handle MDM check-ins and things like that. And there's constant monitoring and alerting as well as kind of various background tasks that validate that things are still working as they should do, and that helps us manage growth. For those that were doing this back in COVID days, this was a real big issue for us because everyone suddenly went home, and no one told us that. Like, we didn't know that they were suddenly going to send the world home. So all of a sudden, our data centers got slightly busier than we were expecting, right? So, but we try really hard to do growth forecast, and we're getting pretty good at it these days. So I'm going to demo this quickly because I think I've been talking about this and people haven't really seen it. So I'm going to set the demo up for you. What this is the Intune console on the top left. It is top left, isn't it? I'm looking at my screen thinking it's not mirrored. Right, so the Intune screen's top left. The settings is on the right. And then at the bottom is a script that is just looking for MDM check-ins, right? So when the device does an MDM check-in, it will just appear in that bottom box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and pick a policy, and we're just going to check that it's applied to this Mac, and then we're going to make a change, and we're going to look to see how long that change takes to land on the Mac itself. So we're going to look at the update policy, and we're going to go and have a quick check at it, and I think this one is set for the 25th of December. So it's 15.4.1, and it's the 25th of December. So we'll go and have a look and check the payload, and it should be matching. So we can see there that that policy is applied. So if we go back into the Intune console and we change the policy to the 1st of December, so we'll go and make that change and then save it. And then if you look in the bottom box, so we've made the change is now checked in Intune, and if we look in the bottom box, it will tell us when the Mac has checked in. So we're just kind of waiting for that to land on the Mac itself. So there's the check-in, so I don't know, 10 seconds or so. And then if we go and have a look in the in settings in the Mac, it's applied, right? So that's pretty quick, right? That's not bad. So we do that for all policies, whether they're DDM policies or any kind of restrictions policy, anything that would be a kind of a payload or a policy that gets deployed to the Mac. So huge improvements in performance and speed, pretty much instant for most devices. We will be doing more here. There's a lot more work for this initiative. So one of the other things that we hear is transparency, a lack of transparency within Intune. You can't see what's going on, so there's a huge amount of work. This is coming, this is not in the product today, but this is kind of what we're trying to do. Help you understand and see what's happening in your environment so you can see what's pending, what stuff we've sent and tried to wake up and it hasn't responded, what stuff we have, and then also what state things are in. DDM helps hugely here because it tells us, it pings back when it's made a change and we don't have to go out actively. So again, looking back to that big circle, all of that maintenance check-in, that was nothing happening. We're trying to get to a point where those check-ins that we're seeing from devices are because something's changed, either reporting or a policy. And what this looks like from a strategic vision perspective in Intune, DDM is a key part of that. One of the reasons we're able to do this stuff and have the capacity to make these changes is because DDM reduces the amount of chatter between the device and the gateways that we have. So the legacy MDM, really chatty. We talked about that last year, about the kind of various chatter backwards and forwards between the device and the management platform. DDM doesn't do that. DDM's kind of a, hey, here's a thing, are you good? And it says, yeah, I'm good, and that's it, we're done, right? And then all we get back from the device then is if something's changed, so things like reporting and policy change and things like that, we get status update back from the device, but only when it's changed. Inventory. You'll see us do even more with inventory. We talked about Resource Explorer, adding all of those additional attributes that we didn't have previously, and they'll be in there in 2 weeks' time. But there are plans to do even more than that. There are plans to start to use the agent that we have on Mac to bring in more attributes on the platform, allow you to bring custom attributes, have them then used within the Intune platform for both like insights, so determining what a device state is, or for targeting applications and policy later. Performance will be the third tier here, right, where we are actively working on ways to improve Intune performance. And this is not just getting the policy to the device, but it's also around status update and making sure that the Intune UI reflects the devices in a much more consistent and smooth way than it does at the moment. I know that's quite jarring for many customers when they come from like productized services where where your MDM platform is literally on a server and it's yours. The performance of that is pretty much real time, and that move to a cloud service is that's a big change. So we're looking to try and improve that hugely. And then the last one is Copilot and agents. So it's probably not passed you all by that the world really likes AI at the moment. Microsoft have spent huge amounts of money, I mean, mind-boggling amounts of money on AI investments and data centers. And the output from that is Copilot. So we've got various Copilots. Intune already has a Copilot, already has AI integrated as part of Security Copilot, but we're also investing in agents on top of that. So you'll see over perhaps the next few months, various agents from us come out there which are doing tasks that are just really difficult to do today. So the combination of these things is where we're going, right? It's investment in platform, investment in the Mac as a platform to make sure that we continue with that investment in making sure that all the payloads and policies that Apple ship, we bring into Intune really quickly. We're normally first to market on all of these at the moment because we import them directly from Apple. So Apple ships stuff and we just suck it straight into Intune. So we're pretty good at that. DDM, again, massive investment in DDM because it helps us, right? It lowers the usage of our gateways, which means we can do some more of this performance stuff, right? We can do more things. More inventory, more performance, and that underpins that's going to get used by the AI and agents that we're going to get building over the next few months. This is the Microsoft Security Copilot. If anybody's not seen this, essentially it's already there, and you can have AI as part of your Intune environment. It lets you, it kind of integrates with your policies and helps you know what to do. It also integrates across your security platforms and helps you identify devices that are at risk and things like that. Tons of investment here as well. It's incredibly fast moving. Right, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. I'll cover a little bit about this. So MDE, there's a refreshed focus, I think, on MDE on Mac at the moment. They have seen the same changes in Mac usage that we have in Intune. And that is interesting because if you think about like where Mac was when I started in Intune, you've got security guys and you've got executives and you've got creatives, and that's who was using the Macs. And so only one of them really is at significant risk, right? Those executives, really expensive shoes, they're the most expensive MacBooks, and they've got stuff on them that could impact the stock price. So it's really, really important stuff. But there weren't that many of them. What we're seeing now is this broad use of Mac across enterprise, and so the data on those Macs is more tempting to the bad guys. So the MDE team are seeing tons more malicious attacks. Apple are doing incredible work with the hardware and with the software, but the bad guys are getting more and more focused on trying to get the stuff of those Macs, and we're seeing more of that. So look to see more from the MDE team over the next year as well, but they've shipped in the last year the real-time behavior monitoring, troubleshooting mode, which is really great. That allows you to kind of almost like switch it off. So the end user can kind of switch it off and test to see if you are running into it, if the AV is causing a problem. Not that it would, obviously, but let's say it did, you could test that. And then users can schedule the antivirus scans themselves, and then the hardware UUID visibility with kind of, again, a ton of the data in those agents that we're looking through are being pulled out of MDE too. So a lot of the data and insights are going into those models to kind of help us determine where risk is. There are two CVEs that I want to cover quickly that the MDE team worked with Apple on. So Joe mentioned this morning about Apple being really open to their partners, which includes us, and we work with them really regularly. So where our team detect problems that we've seen or kind of malicious issues or gaps that we might suspect, the team work with Apple directly to resolve. So this was one of them, the SIP bypass via kernel extension, and this was another, the sandbox escape via security scoped bookmarks. MDE is in a really interesting situation here because there are bigger Mac security products out there, but what MDE has is the insights and signals across all of the Microsoft services. So we know who the bad guys are. We might not know exactly what they're doing yet, but that signal is really valuable to know likely where the bad guys are, because they won't just be looking at Mac, they'll be attacking all of the different platforms and different endpoints that you have. So MDE is one of those unique tools that we've got insights in from Outlook.com, from Xbox, from Windows, from all of the different services that Microsoft operate. All of those insights go into the security graph, and MDE can use that. It uses that predominantly to help detect things, but one of the things is this machine risk score. It's in Windows, it's in iOS, and I'm really pleased that it's coming to macOS. The team are working really hard on this right now. I was hoping to have a demo of this, but it's not quite ready for us to show yet. But this is coming fairly soon. This allows you to take the benefits of that broader ML stuff, so the machine learning and insights across really, really massive scale, to determine whether the device that's trying to access your corporate data is at risk or not. Platform single sign-on, I'm going to skip through these because I want to get some Q&A in at the end. So we've talked about platform single sign-on endlessly, and we talked about it this morning as well. Why pins are better than passwords? This is something from my colleague Michael Epping. They're very, very strongly advising customers to start to rethink the password sync from Entra down to the device. And the reason for that is because once somebody compromises your credentials, your cloud credentials, they've got a lot more than if they just compromised the local PIN or password on the device, right? So if they've got your local device password, they need the device, really. But if they've got your cloud credentials, they can start to do other stuff with it, right? So this aligns really strongly with Windows Hello for Business, and we're seeing lots of organizations struggle with Windows Hello for Business and their Mac estate when they're trying to do password sync. So what we're seeing is pretty successful, is adopting platform single sign-on, use secure enclave. It's hardware backed. It's using all of the really cool stuff that Joe talked about this morning for the platform. And it's also really reducing the likelihood of your users getting their passwords phished because they don't know them. And we're giving them a great end user experience as well. This is where you want to get your phones out, probably. I'll put that at the bottom as well. So this is a change for Entra registration. Currently, the credential that we get from Entra for device registration gets stored in the keychain, and it's transferable. So if you do a backup and restore onto another Mac, it will put it back into the new Mac, and that's not ideal. So this is a move to storing those credentials for the device registration in Entra to the secure enclave. It's a big deal, and it's non-negotiable. It's going to happen in June, and it impacts you. It could impact if you're using Jamf with the compliance connector. It will impact you. If you're using conditional access with Intune, it will impact you. This is going to impact a huge amount of customers. So there's a ton of documentation at the bottom. If you go and look at that at some point when you get back to work, if I could just ask one thing, it's make sure that you are doing this, because it will. I think lots of people are going to run into issues. We have this guide. If you're new to Intune, you've not looked at Intune, we have this. I didn't do the QR code, so I've no idea where that's actually going to go, but I'm trusting my colleague that this is actually going to go to the right place. But there is a bunch of steps there that will help you kind of get started with Intune. And then the last thing is our LinkedIn community. This is not replacing the Slack community. We're still on the Slack community. We still kind of pay attention. Lots of us lurk there and have lurked there for a long time now. But this is where our engineers and product managers are. It's very easy to get them on LinkedIn because they're already there. It's quite hard to get them elsewhere, right? So this is quite a good place to see what's happening. It's a warts and all. We don't run it. We don't own it. I don't have any control over what's happening. You'll see I get beaten up in here every day. So it's not a sales pitch, but this is like a warts and all. If you're thinking of Intune, this is probably a good place to go and take a look. It's currently at 4,000. It's bigger than that now. It's about 4,500 or so, something like that. So when I set this up initially, I was told that no one would use it. So it's bigger than it ever was meant to be. And that's it for me. That's it for content. It gives me 5 minutes dead for Q&A if anyone would like to ask me kind questions or tell me how good a job I did. Surely someone's got a platform single sign-on question.
Just with the managed Entra connection now, is that going to break existing deployments?
No, it doesn't break existing. So, no, it doesn't break existing. So anything that's currently registered will stay. What will happen after June is that if you try and do the same registration flow what I'll call it the legacy registration flow, you'll get an error. It just won't let you register. So it will only allow registration. And ultimately, what it means moving to either the extensible single sign-on extension or platform single sign-on. Platform single sign-on does it securely by default, even if you're using password sync, it uses secure enclave. Although we call it secure enclave and password sync, they both use secure enclave for those credentials. So platform single sign-on is good. If you're using the extensible single sign-on, you have to go and add a key called use most secure in there to make sure it uses the secure enclave.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, though.
Who's next? Sorry, that's you.
Since you wanted a platform SSO question, so I have 2 accounts. I can only access my Azure from one account, but obviously that is different from my standard account. Elevated rights, basically. How would that work with platform SSO?
Oh, that's a really good question. So platform single, so you could use 2 accounts, but you'll just have to sign in with the second account, right? So you have to choose one which will be linked to platform single sign-on, and then when you try and do another one, what I normally do is I will quite often use Edge. I think Edge is really good at this, right? So Edge is essentially Chrome under the covers. It's Chromium apps under the covers, but you can have multiple profiles. And those profiles are completely separated. So you get a completely separate bunch of identities. And that works really well for me. So I normally have like about 8 or 9 different M365 tenants across engineering and in dog food and in public. So that allows me just to right click and just select the one that I want in the browser, right? So not
Funnily
ideal.
enough, I do the same with Chrome, so it's probably quite easy to transfer over to Edge.
Yeah, for that, browsers are browsers, right? So you kind of use whatever works for you. But it's for M365 stuff. Edge is really good for that. I sound like a salesman. That's a bit weird, isn't it? But
I was quite interested in the script that you had that showed when the check-in occurred.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can get hold of that, especially for testing, say if we're deploying an application?
Yeah, you can do. I nicked it from DeFlounder's blog, so if you're familiar. If not, come and grab me and I'll share a copy with you.
Is the problem that I'm thinking to solve with that is when you're testing deployment of an app, you want to see, like, the other day I was doing it with an MSP and we just have to come back a day or 2 later and see, okay, it's gone out. But obviously that's a long time to wait.
Yeah, it is. It's really handy when you're doing that kind of stuff. So there's that one, and then there's also the sidecar agent as well. So we have one that checks for both. But yeah, it's quite a cool bit of code. I had no idea you could do it. By the way, it was I think it was Scripting OS X or DeFlounder. It was one of those 2. I did a really brilliant blog about how to detect MDM check-ins. It's really cool.
Hi, first of all, you did a really amazing job. Thanks for that.
Brilliant, thank you.
And going back to the platform SSO, I think normally you don't open up the company portal, but there's this option, remove account from this device.
Yeah.
Does this work normally? Because it seems to do nothing when I hit it.
Oh, remove account from device?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll make a note, and then if you drop me an email,
Cool.
I'll
Thanks
check
a lot.
in with Audrey and team and see. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, but I'll check in for you.
Great, thanks.
Probably got time for a couple more.
I've got 37 seconds, Jack.
Okay, right. Right, now you've got 35.
Okay, I'll try to be fast. So software developers, stuff we deploy often doesn't adhere to anything standardly, and we need custom information fields for our inventory to be filled with information.
Yeah.
And this populates then maybe a group of devices that can be used to scope other stuff. And so far, Intune has been lacking this dynamic group that can be used as a scope thing. I'm using scope as a word, but Intune probably calls it differently. And also the ability to populate an information item for a device that is gathered via a script that runs locally.
Yeah.
So those 2 things do help us a lot, because other software vendors don't adhere to standards, and we need to build custom information fields. Right?
I get it. I hear it's really frequent. And this is being able to use custom attributes and custom data to deploy policies and apps and things like that too. We absolutely need to do that. There is an active piece of work where we're looking at how to do that, using our agent to go and get that stuff, bring it back into Intune in a way that we can then execute against. You'll see Resource Explorer there today. It's essentially, think of it as an extension of that. So that data will start to then be available in assignment filters, and then we'll start to bring that further in. So think of it as like the first step in, you know, a long road. We absolutely have to do that because the AI models and the agents need the same data to go and execute stuff, right? The more data you feed AI models, the better they get, and the more valuable they become to people that are using them. So we know we've got to pull that stuff in, and there's active work to do that. So hopefully you'll like Resource Explorer, but there's much more of that coming along. So it's a good question. Thank you. Cool, and that's me done then, I think. So I'm hanging around. I've got no friends, so come and see me. If you see me around, come and have a chat. I'll just be like bumming around for the next few days. So thank you all for coming and listening to me. So thank you very much.